Okay, welcome back to a little algebra talk with Mr. Bruns. We're going to discuss a little bit with equations today and perhaps even inequalities. We'll see how our time allows. Just going to make a few problems up. The first one's going to deal with distributive property, which I know we covered a little bit last week or 2 weeks ago. Let's discuss it again. Again, we're going to distribute the number that's next to the parentheses. I draw those little humpity bumps. This gives me 6x minus 2. It's 2 times the entire quantity. I get that. On the other side, be careful. The 4 is not next to the parenthesis. What's actually next to the parenthesis is the negative. And if you want to think of a number, think of it as a -1. So that's what you distribute to the parenthesis, and you pull the 4 directly down. That's minus 4x and then a plus 5. A lot of students make a mistake on that sign, so be careful there. Second step after we distribute is to combine like terms. On the right side, those two give me 9. Now we want to get the x's on one side. Right now I have x's on both sides, so I like to get rid of the smaller x. The smaller one's the minus 4x. So I'll add it over. And just to condense steps, since I'm about out of room, if I bring the x's to the left, I'm going to take the constants to the right. And I always do what I call the opposite operation. The opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. Those cancel, divide by 10. You get a fractional answer, 11/10 or 1 and 1/3. So that's a distributive example. Now let's talk a little fractions and decimals. Some of you guys have a difficult time with that. One of the things we did earlier last week was we had a problem such as this. Now, this is possible. Oh, let's make this a 9 instead. This is possible to do without clearing the fractions, but a lot of students dislike fractions. So, again, a couple different techniques. You could subtract a 4, that's up to you, but at some point, you want to multiply by the least common denominator, which in this problem, if you can tell, is 4. That's my only denominator. And I'm going to take every term up here times the 4. So I remind myself with those humpity bumps. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times the -3/4 x. Remember, the 4's reduce here, so all you're left with is -3x. Be careful here. 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 times 9 is 36. Solve it now just like the previous problem. Now a decimal example. And again, I'm just going to make some kind of crazy question up. If I have 2.1x minus x plus 0.47 equals 8. When I look at these, I ask myself, what is the most number of times I would have to move the decimal point to get rid of it? Here it's once. Here I don't see a decimal. Here it's twice. And here I don't see a decimal. So what I'm going to do is I've got to move it twice. So what power of 10 do I multiply by? If I want to move it twice, I take both sides times 100. 100 has 2 zeros. I will move the decimal twice. So again, I take everything times the 100, and I move the decimal twice. So this will become 210x. This 1 times 100 is minus 100x. Move this twice, 47. 8 times 100 is 800. If you look, now what we've accomplished is we've gotten rid of all the decimals, and it should be much easier to solve. Our last thing to point out, and then we'll stop here for today, are the inequalities. Remember, the only difference in these questions, you still solve them like normal. Your goal is still to get the variable by itself. But the only difference is, if at some point you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality. So here's 2 examples. This is just like the last step of the problem. So make that a negative, make that a negative, and this. To solve this one for x, you divide by a positive 3. Well, dividing by a positive 3 does not flip the inequality. However, in the second example, kind of divide them, you divide by -3. If I divide by -3, that is when you will flip the inequality. So 2 different kind of examples there. When you go to graph, all we really need to see is, I like to see 0. I like to see which side of 0, -4 is on. Is it an open or a closed? It's open because it's just less. Remember, Just less, just greater than is open. If I have be or equal to, that's when the number is included, so you use a closed circle. Then I want all the values less than -4. Well, less than is going to be to the left. The little trick there is if you have the x on the left side, the inequality arrow will point the direction that you shade. Inequality points to the left, x is less, less is left, you shade all the numbers to the left. Because those are all of the numbers that are less than -4. Hope that helps. Happy studies and go algebra.